Hi everyone, welcome. Down here in my wormery, and the trays that you see down here in the corner are the ones that I want to work on today. I've got African night crawlers in them, worms on the left, a cocoon nursery on the right. Haven't checked on them in about 15 days, a little bit over 2 weeks, and they're due. So we're going to get them up on the bench and see how they're coming along. What we're starting with is the cocoon nursery. And this white powder is diatomaceous earth that I spread out across the top of this plastic covering in the hopes that it would capture some of these little flying insects that have been making themselves pretty at home in some of my systems. I can see little pockets, little puddles of insect carcasses. So I've been doing this in a couple of my systems now, sprinkling the diatomaceous earth on so I can try to get my flying insect situation under control. We have pretty much a pile of diatomaceous earth here. Yeah, most of them have succumbed to the diatomaceous earth. Some of them might have just gotten caught up in it when I was letting it all collect down here on the bottom. We'll just set this plastic aside. Oh, got a little predatory insect here. Not a welcome guest in the worm bin. Centipede. The slow-moving millipedes, you know, they're helpers in the worm bin, but centipedes, no. Down here in the cocoon nursery, my main objective is just to get this material into a state where it starts to crumble and flow. That's the reason it's had, time to just sort of sit out here. So I'd like to see it start to begin drying eventually. But I'm going to kind of, put off the desire to have that happen until such a time that the cocoons that are thought to be in this material start to hatch, and then we start to get little baby worms that we can try to round up and evacuate from the castings before the castings get put to use out in the garden or whatever. So there's worms hanging out in here. Not all of them are going to be ones that were necessarily, part of the nursery concept. Some of them are just left behind, but a good number of them are pretty small. And I mean, a 27-day-old system, that would assume that even a cocoon deposited into this material at the very end, before all the adult worms were hauled out and relocated, could have already had enough time to hatch. So the hatching time is, from my understanding, somewhere around 21 to 23 days. I think that's what's believed to be possible for red wigglers. African night crawlers. That could make us, I don't know, put us into a slightly longer time period, maybe because of the fact that it's not quite as warm down here as it could be. I don't know. I'd like to think that, 20 some odd days at this point, closer to 30, is either enough time or close to it to allow cocoons to hatch and babies to emerge. So, at least in the beginning, we're going to help the material dry a little bit, possibly by tilling it up and aerating it the way I'm doing now. But as far as the coverings go, I think we'll kind of stick to the somewhat loose covering the way we had it on there. And I'll probably apply some more of that diatomaceous earth powder to make sure we catch as many of those little flying insects in the powder as we can. Try to get their numbers under control here. Yeah, the material's got some nice moisture to it. Too much, I would say. If your goal was to, for example, sift these castings, the stuff would never pass through a screen. It would never separate into anything smaller than little boulders like this. So, as much as I'd like to see this stuff start to dry, I'm going to just let the material stay a little bit damp for the sake of the baby worms. At some point we got to start fishing them out of here, fishing them out, luring them out. I got to come up with a plan for that, because it is probably time to set a plan like that into action. But we're not going to spend time with that today. I just wanted to, you know, after 15 days, check in, make sure things are okay. All those bugs on the surface, diatomaceous earth, we can just leave that little puddle of material the way it is. And I'll come in here with my applicator and sprinkle a little bit more around the edges. And hopefully we'll keep catching invader insects in here. And hopefully we won't see many more centipedes. There, let's make sure this little guy doesn't get stranded out here on the dry plastic. Any others like him? I think we're in good shape. Onto the worm bin. In the worm bin, I'm expecting leftovers. We put some stuff in here, but it was placed in a way that I think we referred to it as a haphazard feeding or something like that. So there was a big clump of this cornmeal in a plastic container, which who knows, they could have gone in there and scooped it all out. Maybe not. There was also an entire coffee filter full of the coffee, the used coffee in there too. Inaccessible other than from the top with the paper filter surrounding it. So I'm thinking those two items are probably in leftovers in large amounts. The third thing that was in here was also a bunch of rice, which is probably after this much time, 15 days history. And it's in anticipation of the leftovers of coffee and cornmeal paste or whatever that is, that I thought that maybe we'd just be adding some bedding today and just making sure that that existing food that's already in here in the form of leftovers is spread out nicely so that it's edible instead of piled up and inaccessible. And then maybe it would be okay just by doing that rather than needing to get them some more food. Although, you know, we can get down into doing that, and if it seems like giving them more food is a good idea, we can always run up to the fridge and grab a little something for them as well. So let's just, I guess, size up how things down here look with what they got 15 days ago. Over here would be the rice, which I thought would be polished off by now, but it's sort of just turning into this gooey paste. That's in coffee filter number 1. I can see some mold growing on here too, which is pretty yummy looking, at least from a worm's point of view. It's usually considered to be yummy. Here in the middle is this, what do you put a coffee filter around it or something? Whatever, some sort of approach at encapsulating it somehow. I don't know, I wasn't really fond of this idea of leaving the plastic covering in here, but I'd seen a few other people doing it on their channels. I figured, you know, monkey see, monkey do, so I might as well do what I see. But I've changed my mind and I prefer just to be rid of this piece of plastic. And the rest of this being all some sort of cornmeal. I forget what the packaging says, polenta or something. I don't know. It's theoretically all something the worms should be able to eat. Although as far as who's eating this, I would have to guess that it's the mold is who's eating it. I don't even know if the mold's sharing. Are the worms getting any of this stuff? I don't know, it's hard to say. Well, here's the third item that was included in the feeding, and it's just a big pile of coffee. Might look like castings, but it's not. It's just a big pile of coffee. Hardly touched. Well, I mean, there's a few worms in here enjoying it, but for the most part, it's just here, awaiting, you know, consumption. And it was my idea to take all of this leftover rice, all of this leftover corn, meal, polenta stuff, / mold, pile of mold at this point, as well as all this coffee, and release it from its confines, and just get it out here into service so the worms can begin actually eating it, you know, rather than just having it sit in here as a waste of space. So for that, I brought along a whole bunch of soiled paper towels that I found. I rummaged a little bit down through the trash and I pulled out ones that weren't too gross. And I got a whole bunch of them here, so I figured I'd still register this as a feeding because it is kind of, a pretty good size amount of food. And we'll put some worm chow in here too. So even though it's not your traditional sort of kitchen scraps from the freezer type feeding, it's still, in my book, going to be a feeding because of the worm chow, because of all the bedding they're getting fed. And that's how we're going to mark it off. So let's clear out the middle down here. What's a good way to start? We got some existing pieces of paper here too that we can make use of. Some leftover foods. Here's the other one. All right, let's keep these down here at the lowest level. And as sort of a foundation, we could plop in paper towel number 1. And I don't know how to do this. Maybe just sort of smear it, spread it out. To me, it just seems like if it's not in a clump, then it's got a better chance at breaking down. Whether it's by the mold, I don't care. Let the mold keep going with it if that's what it wants to do. Because I got more paper we can pile it onto or into. So let's see. I'm bringing in my worm chow too. Let's not be stingy. Let's try to make this feeding here as awesome as possible, because for the past 15 days it doesn't seem like they've done much, and it's probably partially my fault because it was just thrown in here as big piles of stuff, which could have been spread out a whole lot better for easier access for the little wormies. So my hope is that by setting this up for them this way, we're going to be kind of ringing the dinner bell and creating a little bit of a feeding frenzy down here, hopefully. Although, you know, they are African night crawlers, right? So it's this probably what they crave the most, just, you know, carbon. The food scraps smeared all over it, I guess, is a little bit of a bonus, but they probably are more into the paper. So let's give them more paper. Every little layer of different type of food is going to have its own little private layer of not newspaper, paper towel, or coffee filter. And let's see what else we got here. More of this polenta. Wasn't there more rice, or did we use up all the rice? Let's get this stuff all smeared out. Only got a couple more pieces of paper left here. Ew, gross. Whatever this was. I don't know. Did we get it all? Some more of the coffee. Kind of spread out with paper around it. I'm wondering if got ourselves a couple paper pieces of paper here that are coffee filters, and I usually use coffee filters as a place to indicate where we last fed. Not that it would be so hard to find where we last fed, but I think that this one right here, the one that's already got some of the corner torn away and stuff, that's the one that we're going to include down in the feeding, and this is the one that we're going to save to drape over the top to show ourselves where we gave this bin its feeding of worm chow and fresh bedding. We'll see how the worms take to it. What do you think? I think that's going to be a pretty popular feeding for these guys. Oh man, look at this. I even got more. 2 more. Let me just look around here, make sure I didn't forget any. Like I said, these are African night crawlers. They're kind of known for almost preferring bedding over kitchen scraps, so you would think even though they're getting worm chow and all the cornmeal and, you know, rice and all these things that seem like they'd be the perfect meal for little worms, they're probably more interested in the bedding and in the paper that you feed them. Alright, so some of them are hanging out down here. There's a good amount of moisture down low. I guess that piece of plastic that was covering the whole bin across the top is doing a nice job keeping the moisture down low. Here's the mango seed. Nice castings development down here. You know, we're not even into 4 weeks yet, 27 days. Tomorrow it'll be 4 weeks of age of this system. And this being only its second feeding, it's looking nice. Looking very nice. Let's get some more of this. Okay, that's pretty cool too. Just figured I'd get some of this bedding that's in different sections of the bin to try to cover up our feeding with. Oh my goodness, we got a little party going on here. I wonder what they're eating. It seemed like there was something here. Or maybe some of that rice had spilled out in this direction and that's what they were doing, is nibbling on the rice from the side. I don't know, it's hard to say, but it did seem like we actually did barge in on a little bit of a feeding frenzy there, which was kind of cool. But I think we're more or less done here. Just attempting to level things off here nicely. I've even got my diatomaceous earth sprinkler, shaker, applicator right over there. So I think we can also at the same time just go right ahead and get the coverings on here, but in such a way that we can also try to continue to ward off the bug situation by attempting to knock them out with the diatomaceous earth. I can see a worm on here. Nothing, I probably could have just left the little guy right there. It wasn't necessary for me to evict him. But whatever. There's one more worm over here on the plastic covering. Actually a worm who doesn't look quite right. Is he alive? Kind of looks like only the part of a worm. So, whatever. Over here, I guess we didn't have diatomaceous earth, right? It was only on the cocoon nursery. Here, I'm wondering if we even need it. Didn't seem that way. Perhaps we can just let it go the way it is. Alright everyone, that's it for today. Nice little check-in with the African nightcrawlers. I'm hoping that they're going to enjoy this sort of, I don't know, a rehabilitation of their over 2-week-old feeding that's sort of sat here, locked up and inaccessible. My hope is that by combining it with, you know, fresh carbon-based food materials, extra bedding, paper, and spreading it out, and also adding that worm chow, all those things I'm hoping are going to kind of increase its appeal, and hopefully the next time we come in here, hopefully we're going to see a big dent over here because they've eaten up the majority of what we've given them, and then we can give them more. Alright everyone, that's it for today's video. I got a few things I got to clean up and put away, but before I do that, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you haven't done so already, also give the video a quick thumbs up. That's always very much appreciated. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.